and let us all do we can to build a better future.
All right. But without further ado, the people are here. I think it's time for us to get started with our first segment of the day.
It
So, Lainey.
absolutely is. And I remind everybody, go under the video. You check out the show notes. That's my newsletter. It's free to subscribe. You'll get it the day of the show. So in case a certain platform doesn't send out notifications, you're getting a reminder to tune in. But first story is from the Washington Post. Now, many of you may be aware that many government offices are remarkably underfunded. That may be not true for, say, Department of Defense, but it is absolutely true for, say, Social Security. And many of you are also aware that when people apply for Social Security disability coverage because, well, they're disabled, it can take months in some cases to even get an initial determination. In most cases, roughly about 70% of the time, the initial claim is denied, and the person will have to go through a series of appeals or administrative hearings. So, what is happening is that the situation has actually gotten worse. And there are a number of reasons why the situation has gotten worse. But this article in the Washington Post really zeroes in on a lot of problems. In some cases, in many states right now, several states, the wait time for getting a claim approved has more than doubled.
Oh my
And
God.
people are, in this case, one woman in here, she's waiting for a response. She is living in a car with her husband, who is also disabled,
Okay. Richest
while
country in the
waiting for the
world. We
benefits. And
can't
one of
take
the
care of our
problems
people.
here is this, Kit, is that there's a process, and you have to have your claim denied so you can move through that process. And the problem is that her claim is just being hung up. She is in limbo. If she got a decision, even if it was a rejection, she'd have a right to go to a judge.
Wow. And look,
So, but as long as she's in limbo, she doesn't have that's not available to her.
so I'm pulling up this map right here, and this is longer processing times for disability cases. Texas average processing time for initial claims has more than doubled from 79 days in 2019 to 214 days in fiscal year of 2022.
Sick and disabled people. And
My
they
goodness.
need that claim because even if they're denied, that they can at least move on in the program or in the system.
Wow.
Without the denial, even a denial is better than nothing. And what I didn't understand was just how underfunded this system is when you start looking at the pay scale. They start the initial point. They start the initial article at the very beginning. They notice that in Texas, because the states administer this federal program, in Texas, nearly 40% of the examiners of these cases have quit since January.
Wow.
And one worker there noted that she was making 17.50 an hour to work there and make decisions about people's lives. She was trying to evaluate whether they were disabled enough to qualify for benefits. They said in one case in September, 75,000 new claims were within 1 week were routed to the electronic queue, which was already under 2.5 years of strain. 17.50 an hour. And here's the thing that I've also found out. First of all, the people who are doing these reviews are not trained in medicine. They're not necessarily healthcare workers. Some states do not even require them to have a college degree.
Okay, so look, here's something that I've said on the show. Now listen, this is again from the Washington Post, but hey, I said this on the show. As they wait, some Americans already living at their limits have found themselves with fewer resources, worsening medical conditions, and no access to health insurance that comes with disability benefits. So, why am I reading this sentence in particular? What have I said on the show? Sorry to sound like a broken record, but what has everyone in independent media has said? From all my co-hosts here at Heartlands Media, from the Jimmy Dore Show to Revolutionary Blackout Network, Convo Couch, and so many others. What have we said? What exactly have we said? We said that the Democrats and the Republicans in Washington, D.C. don't like us, don't think about us, don't respect us. They get to have gold-plated health care, a six-figure salary, wonderful social benefits, and connections to the people in the top 1% from big celebrities and so much more, corporations, etc., etc.
They get to go to the Met.
And the thing is, Americans, one bad day, one bad ailment, or you get sick, we're at risk of facing medical bankruptcy. Medical bankruptcy. We have no student debt forgiveness. Americans are being evicted from their homes and apartments. We have an ongoing health crisis here. We have a ridiculous system where corporations and large real estate developers are buying land and housing away from the people.
Yep.
There's, again, who really represents us in Washington, D.C.? Does the Republic, the people who we elect, really represent us? And the answer is no. They represent their constituents. No, not you, the Democratic and Republican voter. You're a victim of domestic abuse, unfortunately. If you vote Democrat or Republican, you are a victim of domestic abuse. Take off your sunglasses and show me that shiner that you have there that you're trying to hide. The number one constituents to the Democratic and Republican lawmakers in the United States Senate and House and the various presidential administrations, both Democrat and Republican, are working for Wall Street, big banks, and major corporations. Lainey, take it away.
The other thing that was in here, and this was startling, starting pay for these examiners varies from just over $16,000 annually in Puerto Rico to a little bit over to $75,000 in DC, which is an outlier. Florida pays $32,655. In Minnesota starts at 47. Well, just getting up to 48,000. So these are not, there's not a lot of in many of these states. People are not making a lot of money. They're not making enough to justify them staying on these jobs, which are incredibly frustrating. And in many cases, they're required to go through hundreds of pages of documentation. And many of these folks do not have a medical or healthcare background.
Wow.
It's just, and what I saw in this article was stuff that I knew about, but I did not fully understand the reasons why. And apparently they have hiring freezes, but even when they don't have hiring freezes, people quit. Like they just said in Texas, 40% of their examiners quit this year. And nobody wants a job, starting at $17.50 an hour, where all you're going to have to do, what you're dealing with is frustration and overwork. And again, these people are sick. It's like last week, Kit, when I was talking about how not-for-profit hospitals are not providing information to poor and in low-income patients about how the hospital can and is required to help them. These people are sick. They should not, or they're injured. They should not have to be taking up time which they need for healing and rehab, occupational therapy. They should not have to be taking this time to chase down services and benefits that they desperately need. And now we see that it's very clearly built right into the system. You starve an agency, and
wow.
you make it impossible for them to hire qualified people to review medical cases, giving those people an adequate salary. This is what happens. And guess what? A lot of these folks, they die. They just kind of fade out of the system. They give up. That's what we're living with right now.
I wish I could say something else that can make the story sound better, but I can't.
There isn't anything. And I mean, and if, as I said, this is just it. What I'll say about this story here in the Washington Post, and the Washington Post has good journalists. We dunk on corporate media and some of the owners here, but they've got some great journalists there.
Yeah.
And this humanizes, and it brings, this is why this system doesn't work. Many of us know people who have had to go through the disability system, have waited months and years, sometimes, being homeless during that time, experiencing homelessness, not getting any medical care, and their families are destroyed, straining their family and their relationships. This is why that happens.
Agreed. Folks, there are millions of Americans going through this right now. You know, recently I saw Ryan Grimm get eviscerated by Brianna Joy Gray and Kashama Sawant. And I thought that was fantastic, because you hear people like Ryan Grimm and TYT and Majority Report defending the squad and these progressive Democrats and the Congressional Progressive Caucus and so much more, to which I have to say, where are they? Why aren't they fighting? Where are they at? Was it all a show? The answer is yes, it was all a show. These Americans that are suffering right now are left on their own. So when we hear at Heartlands Media, or you hear from Revolutionary Blackout Network, or Convo Couch, or the Jimmy Dore Show, or anywhere else, when we tell you that our federal government, your Democratic and Republican lawmakers have abandoned you, this is just one of the many pieces of proof that we have. They're not going to fight for us. They're not going to do it. They're okay with Americans dying in their streets. They're okay with Americans suffering. They're okay with Americans starving. They're okay with this. Your lawmakers in Washington, D.C., if you're a Democratic or Republican voter and you vote for these jagoff politicians, they're okay with you suffering. They will steal to you. They will steal from you. They will lie to you. They will abuse you because they don't respect you. They built a system that's designed to keep us in absolute poverty. And it is very expensive to be poor in America.
It is very expensive to be poor. When you read about these people who are living in their car, I mean, they don't have a place to cook their meals. So they eat one meal a day at the hot bar at a grocery store.